You know The Matrix, right?
Yeah.
But it's way more than just Keanu Reeves dodging bullets, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about this incredibly detailed, multi-layered world, and what's really fascinating, I think, is that its history is almost as twisty as figuring out if you've, like, taken the red pill or not.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And if you've seen the films, especially Resurrections, you'll know that the Matrix we see isn't some static thing. It's not the original program.
Right.
It's been through several iterations, different versions, cycles, each one, well, designed with a purpose,
Yeah.
and each facing its own set of challenges.
Exactly, and that's what we're digging into today. We've got some great info here, a really detailed look from Screen Rant at all 8 known cycles, plus a super helpful timeline to keep it all straight. So for you, the listener, if you want to get a really solid understanding without, wading through endless forums and fan theories, this is kind of your fast track.
Yeah, we're boiling it down.
Our mission today. To understand how the Matrix has evolved through these 8 different versions and really nail down the reasons behind those changes. So let's jump in. The first attempts, the paradise cycles.
Right. So the machine's initial strategy was, well, from a purely logical standpoint, pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Their first 2 versions of the Matrix, they were designed as perfect utopian worlds. The thinking was simple, really. Keep humans completely content. They won't question reality. And they'll provide a nice, stable energy source.
It sounds good on paper, doesn't it? I mean, who wouldn't want to live in a perfect world?
You think so?
But here's where it gets really interesting. Like Agent Smith told Morpheus in the first film, remember that speech?
Oh, yeah. Classic Smith.
He basically said this perfect setup was a complete disaster, a failure. Humans rejected it, like on a fundamental level.
Exactly. They sensed something was wrong intuitively, even if they couldn't put their finger on it yet. And what's fascinating here is what this tells us about the machine's initial grasp, or lack thereof, of human psychology. They can simulate sensory input perfectly, sure, but they couldn't account for that inherent human need for, well, struggle maybe, challenge, even just imperfection.
Yeah, that tracks.
It's quite likely, as the Screen Rant article suggests, that the Oracle played a role here. In her job of trying to understand humans, she probably helped the machines realize this fundamental flaw in their paradise design.
The Oracle, always a step ahead, even back then, with her cryptic wisdom. Maybe not so cryptic to the machines then, I guess.
Maybe not.
So Paradise was a bust, total no-go. What was the next move? This is where the real world cycle comes in, the third version.
Right. And what's insightful here is the complete 180 in design philosophy.
How so?
Having failed with perfection, the machines swung the other way, this third cycle. It mirrored the imperfections, the mundane stuff, even the frustrations of the real world, the world before the war, that is.
Okay.
The logic was basically make the simulation feel authentic, flaws and all, and humans would be less likely to notice it's fake. You can almost hear the machines thinking, okay, they don't like perfect, fine. Let's give them traffic jams and Mondays.
Huh. And it seems like that approach worked much better, didn't it?
Significantly more effective, yes.
The Screen Rant piece points out that after this change, spontaneous awakenings, people figuring it out on their own, became way rarer.
That's right.
Even Neo, who we know was, the one, he only had that vague feeling, that splinter in his mind. Couldn't quite articulate it.
Indeed. The timeline supports this. This third version was relatively successful in maintaining control. And what's really noteworthy is how few people managed to break free without help from the outside.
Like without a Morpheus figure.
Exactly. The article mentions the Kid and Dan Davis from the Animatrix. They're seen as incredibly rare examples. It just highlights how well those subtle imperfections actually worked to create a believable reality, even if it was, fake.
All right, so we've gone from a dream world to something kind of like everyday life. Now we hit a bit of a blind spot. The 4th and 5th Matrix cycles. What's the deal with these? Less documented.
Yeah, as this Screen Rant article points out, detailed info on cycles 4 and 5 is pretty scarce. But we can make some educated guesses looking at the patterns.
Okay, like what?
Well, given the early failures and the sort of transitional third cycle, and then considering how disruptive the 6th cycle was.
The one from the movies.
Right. It's reasonable to hypothesize that cycles 4 and 5 were periods of, let's say, greater stability for the machines. Maybe these are just refinements of that real-world simulation, the system humming along more or less as intended.
So more like a rinse and repeat situation for the machines. The one pops up, makes the choice at the source, Matrix gets reset, Zion gets wiped out, and the cycle just continues without major drama.
That's the likely scenario, exactly. The implication is that in these cycles, the anomaly of the one did its job. It functioned as that self-correcting mechanism for the system.
Right.
There wasn't the same level of, widespread deviation or crazy unforeseen consequences like we see right before, and definitely in cycle 6. These cycles, 4 and 5, they provide a kind of baseline. Shows that not every version was a major crisis.
Makes sense. A bit of calm before the storm, I guess, before things get really wild in the 6th cycle, the one we all know from the original trilogy.
This is where the established pattern really starts to break down significantly.
How so?
The architect's big info dump in Reloaded, that reveals the crucial bit. Neo isn't the first one. Morpheus thought he was, right?
Yeah, totally. He was so sure.
But nope, he's the 6th. And what's particularly interesting is while the previous ones were also anomalies, Neo had something different, partly due to the Prime program integrated into him.
Right. Morpheus is so convinced he's found the fulfillment of the prophecy, and then the architect just drops this bombshell. Actually, this has happened 5 times before.
Exactly. Big shock for everyone.
And Neo, unlike the others, apparently starts making choices that weren't predicted. He goes off script.
Precisely. Neo's ability to act outside the Oracle's prophecies, driven by his connection with Trinity, that's a major deviation. But that's not the only thing making this cycle unique.
Oh, what else?
Agent Smith. His unexpected evolution after that encounter with Neo, that's another critical turning point.
Ah, yes, Smith.
Smith breaking free from machine control. That creates a third, totally unpredictable element in the system, something the machines just hadn't planned for at all.
Smith becoming this rogue program, just replicating himself like a virus, that really threw a spanner in the works, didn't it?
Absolutely. He wasn't just an agent anymore. He became a threat to the whole system, including the machines themselves.
It kind of highlights the risks, Creating something so complex and interconnected, things can spin out of control.
Exactly. And that's why the 6th cycle unfolded in such an unprecedented way. That established loop, the one chooses reload, Zion gets destroyed, it was fundamentally disrupted by Smith, this external viral force.
So the usual ending was off the table.
Right. And remember, as the Screen Rant article reminds us, this cycle, like the others before it, was probably heading towards Zion's destruction and rebuilding. That happens roughly every century, if Smith hadn't completely changed the game.
So Neo manages to beat Smith. But instead of just hitting reset, we get the 7th cycle, the truce. Finally, maybe some real peace.
Yes, the end of revolutions marks a huge shift. Neo's sacrifice leads to this unprecedented truce between humans and machines.
A big deal.
For the first time, humans are actually allowed to leave the Matrix if they want to. And this cycle sees a different kind of Matrix emerge, seemingly more harmonious. You've got the Oracle, Sati. It suggests a possibility of maybe collaboration.
It really felt like a turning point, didn't it? A symbiotic relationship, like the article says, where both sides could, maybe coexist.
In theory, yes.
But then came resurrections.
And it made it pretty clear that peace didn't last very long.
Well, what's insightful there is how the very freedom granted in the 7th cycle kind of sowed the seeds of its own destruction.
You know what I mean? All those humans leaving the Matrix. It created serious energy shortages for the machines. And that triggered a devastating machine civil war.
Whoa, a civil war between machines.
Yes. From which the analyst emerged victorious. It highlights this potential paradox. The machines offer freedom, but it undermines their own stability.
The analyst, played by Neil Patrick Harris, that master manipulator, he basically just hits reset on the truce, doesn't he?
Pretty much, yeah.
We jump forward 60 years after Reloaded, which is a much shorter cycle than the others, right?
A significantly shorter, yeah.
And the analyst is back to almost total control.
Indeed. The 8th cycle, the Resurrections one, is defined by his reboot. Free will is actively suppressed. Key programs like the Oracle and the Architect, they've been pruned, deleted, basically.
Ouch.
And Neo and Trinity are brought back, re-uploaded, not as saviors this time, but as the new main power source. Their unique connection is somehow key to keeping his new system stable.
Wow, so it's a huge step back, really, compared to the hope at the end of Revolutions.
It's a stark contrast, yes.
Yeah.
A definite regression in terms of human-machine relations within the simulation.
Okay, so with all these different cycles and all these ones, it brings up a big question. Was Neo the one in every single previous cycle?
Wow, good question.
Because when the architect shows Neo all those screens in Reloaded, they all look like Neo. It definitely gives that impression.
It does, visually. But that's a key point of interpretation. The Screen Rant article suggests an alternative way to look at it.
Which is?
It's more likely those screens are symbolic, a representation of the prophecy itself, the recurring anomaly, rather than literal pictures of the same person every time.
So the one is a role, not necessarily always the same individual.
Exactly. The concept of the one is this recurring imbalance, necessary for the system to evolve, apparently, but the specific person filling that role could very well have been different each time. Which, opens up some really intriguing possibilities for prequels, maybe. Exploring the stories of those previous ones.
Ooh, prequels. Yeah, that's a rabbit hole I could definitely go down. But okay, before we get totally sidetracked, there's one more layer to peel back. The Matrix in a Matrix theory.
Ah, yes, the metamatrix idea.
The idea that even the real world, Zion might just be another deeper level of the simulation.
It's a compelling theory.
Yeah.
Though it's one that Resurrections kind of leaves on the table, doesn't really explore further.
Right.
But the core idea is maybe the red pill, blue pill choice isn't about escaping completely. Maybe it's just choosing between different layers of simulation.
So Zion is just level 2.
In that view, yeah. Maybe a tougher, less comfortable level, designed to catch the people who reject the first simulation, give them a sense of struggle, purpose, but still within a controlled environment.
There were definitely moments in the original trilogy that made you wonder, weren't there?
Oh, for sure.
Like Smith somehow possessing Bane outside the Matrix. How does that work?
Exactly.
And Neo's powers in the real world, stopping the Sentinels, seeing code everywhere, it felt a bit fishy.
Precisely. Those anomalies really fuel the Matrix in a Matrix theory. If the real world was truly real, how could these Matrix-like things happen there?
But like you said, Resurrections didn't really pick up that thread.
No, it didn't delve into it. So it's left as either an intriguing unanswered question or maybe just a discarded idea within the story.
Okay, so wow. We've taken quite a journey through these 8 known cycles of the Matrix.
We have.
From those flawed paradise attempts to the fragile truce, and then back again to tight control under the analyst. It really is this constant push and pull, isn't it, between the machines needing stability and humans wanting freedom. Real choice.
Precisely. I think the key takeaways are, first, the machine's initial, almost naive misunderstanding of human nature leading to the failure of those paradise cycles.
Right.
Then their more successful attempt to mirror reality, flaws and all. And then, these pivotal disruptions caused by unique factors like Neo's choices, Smith's evolution, and finally, the analyst's calculated manipulations. All of these just dramatically reshaped how these cycles played out.
So as you, the listener, are processing all this, here's a final thought to chew on. What if that Matrix in a Matrix theory isn't entirely crazy? If the reality we perceive, even the one we might fight for, could itself be just another simulation? What does that tell us about, well, reality? About choice?
Deep questions.
Yeah. What parts of our own world, our own experiences, might, if you look really closely, make you question their true nature? It's definitely a thought-provoking idea to sit with.
It is indeed.
And maybe, just maybe, it's a good time to revisit the Matrix films with this whole cyclical history in mind. You might just notice some new things.